welcome to Recall to Base, a show where I recall and talk about all things Riftbound. I'm Samuel. Yeah, it's just me today. Because...
I'm at Lille.
So yeah, we're gonna have to enjoy my company for a whole episode. I don't know how long this is gonna be. I'm the one editing this time, so that's cool. But yeah, we're gonna have to deal with having only one person. If you could share this video around so we could view Mog Nathan, and so he knows his place and he knows that this show doesn't need him. So while Nathan's at Lille, and while this podcast is going to be randomly interjected by Nathan's appearance on his recordings of Lille, I thought, hey, do you know what's a good talking point to talk about in the podcast, or a good theme? It's how to build decks. I like to think both me and Nathan are like brewers and deck builders, and that's kind of like our main thing in this game. So why not give you the secret sauce of how we do it, what's our approach, and hey, maybe I can even convince Nathan to record something so I can put it in later in the video. Okay, so building a deck, specifically in Riftbound. Recently I was reading I was watching a podcast or listening to a podcast by some very good Legacy players. It's called the Eternal Glory Podcast, magic stuff. But they were talking about some points that are basically universal to any competitive TCG, which is, first, you need to know what you're doing to build a deck, because they do coaching, and the whole theme was what people come to them for coaching for. And a lot of people ask them advice on how to build a deck or what to do in like a format like Legacy where everything is so strong. And basically the whole thing was, don't build anything and don't start anything until you know exactly what you're doing. And that can kind of be applied to Riftbound, because I was talking to one of my friends at the LGS in the last Nexus nights, and one thing he said that kind of stuck out to me is that innovation, at least so far, has not been rewarding in Riftbound, because the only people who have been rewarded for innovating are the people who built the meta decks. So basically, that doesn't really count, because you're just building something that's already going to be very competitive. Like Kai'Sa, everyone knows Kai'Sa is going to be good. Whoever built that deck isn't like, yes, they're rewarded in the sense where now they have the best deck, but anyone else who tried to build anything else was not rewarded, because nothing was beating Kai'Sa in set 1. Likewise, from now, where the top tier of the meta is so strong, you innovating with like Renata or with, I don't know, Master Yi, okay, Master Yi is kind of coming back, but with any other deck, is not really being rewarding. This links back to the point about the not creating anything new unless you know what you're doing, because unless you're very in tune with the format and unless you know exactly what to attack in the meta, you building a new deck in terms of competitiveness is going to be very punishing, because you're going to just spend a lot of time, a lot of resources, and honestly money to put a deck together, and you're just going to get crushed by, I don't know, Draven, Irelia, etc. However, while this might sound very doom and gloom and might sound like I'm trying to convince you not to build a deck, basically I'm just saying, hey, wait until the next set. The meta currently right now is a bit volatile, so wait until the next set so start building. So I think now is a really good time to start looking forward to Unleashed, as it's like honestly less than a month away. So you can start like looking forward to what you're going to build next. And whereas in the current meta, innovation is very punishing, in any new meta, innovating is at its peak. You're going to be playing with new stuff, you're going to be playing with new legends, you're going to be playing with new cards in general, new strategies. So the person who can crack it first, hey, you're getting rewarded, just like the person who cracked, well, that sounds wrong. Just like the person who discovered all the best tech for Kai'Sa in set 1, for example. Okay, let's start with the actual recipe. The first thing I think, when considering what to do when you're building a deck, is what is the core strategy and what is the core archetype. Before we even start looking at goals and what you want to achieve with this deck, which is a really important thing, you want to know what exactly it is the deck is going to be doing, because that's then going to inform you on how competitive this strategy is going to be and what your appropriate goals could be with this strategy. So, what do I mean by what exactly is the theme? You want to think about if the deck is aggro, if the deck is control, mid-range, if you're just built around your legend and you're doing your own thing, kind of like LeBlanc, where it's a very heavy attrition deck. And are we playing just the good cards, or are we playing some more niche things? And that's the kind of thing you want to be thinking about. You want to think about, hey, is this strategy going to just be weirdo niche stuff that's not going to win a lot of games, but if it does the thing, is going to be very cool? Or are you building something that is attacking the meta in a specific way to then lead you on to, in the future, have success piloting this thing as skirmishes, Nexus Knights, whatever have you? So that's the first thing. So an example like this would be when I built Darius. I wanted to build something that was aggressive because I thought currently in the meta, except for Draven, this was back in Spirit Forge before the bans, except for Draven, anything would be really good against a deck that could pump out a lot of threats. I was playing against someone on TCG Arena, I was playing MF, and I was playing against someone playing a very similar build, and I thought, oh my god, this deck is really fast, and it's like, I bet this does a lot of work against meta decks like Victor, against Miracle, that kind of thing. So that's where I started with Darius. And then, once I built a deck, I realized, yes, this is probably going to work. And then I set some goals. That's the second step. The second step is, what are you trying to achieve with your brew, with your new deck that you're building? Are you trying to break the meta and try to make a new staple in competitiveness so that you can go on and compete in skirmishes or in, I don't know, regionals like Lille, that's happening right now? That's one of the approaches you can do. So if that's the case, then that's going to change your deck building very much compared to if what your goals are is to just make something fun, make something that is going to impress everyone at Nexus Nights, maybe not necessarily be the most competitive, but be like an interesting take. For example, I have a lot of friends who are trying to build Renata, but for example, someone trying to build Ornn, where they're trying to maybe just try to see what the limits of the legend is, what is the most pushed way you can build this deck that is probably bad, but you want to see how good it can get, despite the fact that it's bad. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say goals. But maybe you have something in the middle. Maybe you just want to like win packs at Nexus Nights. That's kind of the approach I have with Darius. So, not Darius, Draven, because recently I built Draven, but I didn't really build it. I was just putting playing a meta list and then seeing what different cards people are running to see what I would like, not like, and then change accordingly. For example, I was playing at Nexus Knights the other day. I realized, hey, 3 Ferris Runner, when you already have so much top end, feels a bit much, because then you're going to be very top end heavy, and they're going to be clunking up your hand. So I was like, hey, maybe let's go to 2 Ferris Forerunner so I can play one more Ride the Wind, which I thought was a really strong combat trick in this deck. That's an example. Okay, so now that we have our goals established, let's reflect on how these goals can affect your deck building. So, if you're trying to win a tournament, then obviously the first thing you need to consider is the meta. Is your deck going to be decent into the majority of the playing field? So you have to, probably the most important thing is you have to look at the most popular deck in the meta right now. So if you're building a deck for current Spirit Forge post-ban meta, you'd have to think, hey, can my deck beat Irelia? That's the number one thing. Then you have to think, can my deck beat Kai'Sa? Can my deck beat Victor? Can my deck beat Draven? That's the kind of thing you're going to be thinking about. Now, you don't have to beat every single one of those decks. That's impossible. That's why the meta feels kind of soft, because it's like, well, you can beat one deck very well, but you can't beat the others. That's kind of what Darius was. He could beat Miracle very well, he could beat Control Victor very well, but he would kind of fold against Draven, and the matchup against Irelia was kind of meh. So you have to kind of pick your battles. If you're trying to play for the most competitiveness, you just have to see, okay, which deck is the one I'm most likely going to face, and so therefore would try to build to beat, versus other decks that I could probably face, but I'm just going to accept that I have a slightly worse matchup to them and just pray that statistics are on my side. And this can put you in a very strong position when you build a new deck, because if you're attacking the meta in a specific way, this gives you the advantage of, well, you're just going to be beating a lot of the field. So, for example, if you're trying to beat Irelia, you could play a yellow-green, I don't know, Leona build, which just has a lot of removal, a lot of hold potential, and you can just like Call of the Week and Hidden Blade them to death, and have your own counter spells like Defy and Windwall to stop their protection. That's an example. And then you can run a lot of salvages to kill all the GAs, and try to get there by holding, and then For example, if they try to come in after you into your battlefield while you're holding with, like, I don't know, Leona or something, you just play I don't know, Rune Prison, and then their Aurelia can't do anything. This is just an idea I'm throwing off the top of my head, but this is the kind of thing you need to be thinking about. So when you're building to win, you kind of take the first thing I was talking about, where you think about the strategy, and you put it a little bit back, because you're kind of working from the top down. Your goal is, I want to beat the most meta deck as efficiently as possible to then win the most amount of games as possible, so that way you think, what's a strategy that beats this deck? Hold and yellow cards that can kill very efficiently. And then you start building from there. So therefore, the logical conclusion is build Leona, because you need to not only kill their stuff, but also counter their protection. That's it. I think like that's kind of where Control Victor arise from, because Control is very good into the very like combat heavy meta. Like what Irelia does is just conquer battlefields by running you over. Draven was just like built around winning combat. So the deck like Victor kind of arose out of, hey, what about just kind of avoiding combat until I need to, and then just killing all their threats so that they run out of threats and then just run out of cards. So yeah, that's what I mean when I say consider the meta. But if you're doing the fun thing and you're just trying to build a deck to play in your Nexus Nights, impress your friends, that kind of thing, then it doesn't really matter. Just do whatever you think is fun. Start by thinking of a legend. I don't know, Ivern, for example. Think about what's the best Ivern cards you could play, and then just shove them all together. Or you have this neat interaction you learned about, like, I don't know, Jace plus the Armory combo. You just want to play a deck that has the Jace and Armory combo and just wins a lot of games with it. So you play, like, I don't know, Renato or something. When you're doing a build like this, it is very easy to get lost in the sauce. It is very easy to just, okay, this is the combo I'm trying to build towards, so I'm just going to play a lot of cards to focus on this combo specifically. But that's going to lead to very bad results a lot of the time, because you need to be playing strong cards so that you're not just going to get ran over. So if you're playing a deck with green and you really want to do your fun green Ivern thing, unfortunately you are going to have to run a lot of Defies, a lot of Disciplines, a lot of that kind of card that are staples in the meta, just so that you don't just fold to whatever you run against. Like, I don't know, Draven, I don't know. Yeah, so even though you're trying to do the fun thing, you still have to put good cards in your deck to support whatever fun thing is you're doing. And in that sense, you can even come out with something pretty good, because then you're not just going to play the random bunch of combo cards that can do the fun thing. You're going to play not only that, but also something to support them, so that your fun thing is more consistent and more resilient. That's the main thing, to make your deck more consistent and more resilient, basically. And then, if you're just trying to win Nexus Knight packs, then I would argue this is kind of difficult to build a deck around, because you're going to be facing a lot of variety, and it's just going to be a lot of die roll. Because at Nexus Knights, people are just building whatever they have, and they're just running whatever they already had and whatever they think could be fun. So yeah, people are going in there with varying levels of how sweaty they want to be, how competitive they're trying to like be. So you're going to run against a lot of jank, I don't know, the Orn's something, I don't know, and then your deck is like, oh, I can't beat Orn. So yeah, it's kind of hard to tech for a field that can beat everything unless you're playing meta. But if you're trying to build something new, then you can't really do that. So I don't know, just get lucky. Okay, then I would say that the third thing you need to do when you build a new deck is see what colors you're running, and then get all the staples in those colors. So when I build Pike, I'm thinking, okay, while this legend is very niche and not a lot of decks have been like playing around replaying the same thing over and over again, I'm thinking, okay, so this deck wants to be running kind of low drops and like efficient creatures so that I can redeploy them very easily after I bounce them back to my hand. What are the staple 2-drops that I can play? And obviously the answer I came to is like Treasure Hunter or Overzealous Fan or Noxious Hopeful. These are like cards that have been tried and true. They have been able to prove themselves in the meta. And if my deck wants to be playing cheap cards, those are the cheap cards I'm going to be running. And then on Pike, I realized, okay, once I have this overflow of treasures, all these runes that I've been accumulating by just playing cheap creatures and building treasures, Then now I can start thinking about what's the high-end threats that I'm going to be deploying. For that, I can already look at what's been successful. Like, for example, people play a lot of Mind Splitters because they're good at giving you information and ripping the most important card from your opponent's hand. And it sounds like replaying those guys is pretty good, so put in some Mind Splitters. I've also seen that Bryn here is a good card because shutting down your opponent's interaction is strong, so put in a few Bryn heres. That's the kind of approach you need to be. So you need to see what your deck is doing, and then see what staples that your deck can support that you should be running. So if you want to build an Ahri deck, for example, I was building Ahri, I thought Ahri was pretty cool, a neat legend. If you're building Ahri, you need to think, okay, what are the staples in these colors for the strategy? So you not only need to consider the colors, but you also need to consider your strategy. So in hold decks, you see a lot of people playing Mutated Mauser in decks like Vex, because it's a 3-might defender with tank just for 2 mana. So obviously I'm going to play that. Then you want Ravenbloom Student as one of the most efficient creatures in the game that can just grow indefinitely based on the cards you play. Spells, basically. So we need to put some of those in. Then I realized, the deck needs a few more 2-drops. What's the next best 2-drop in these colors? Plundering Poro. That's a good card. Slide that in some number. Then you need to think, okay, now that I have my early game sorted, then I need to think, what are the cards that are going to help me hold the battlefield? Discipline is probably one of the best green cards in the game. Slide that in. It's going to grow my units so that they're bigger than whatever's attacking me. And it's also going to be tricking them into thinking, I can overcome in this battlefield with my bigger unit because they only have a 2-might holder or a 3-might holder. Then you slap a Discipline. It's bigger. Yeah, basically just explaining why Discipline is good. Plus the card replaces itself. It's so nuts. And then you got to consider, hey, my game plan kind of folds to my units getting removed because then my battlefield is empty and I can't play my stun spells, I can't play my hold spells, whatever. You then have to run a lot of defies, a lot of not so fastest. Protection against your opponent's removal. If you want to think an even deeper level, you got to start thinking about what would counter your strategy. That's why you play a lot of defies, but also someone pointed out to me, yeah, all these hold strategies, they're going to be very cool and all until you're playing against blue and someone plays an unchecked power on you and then you just lose the game on the spot. That's true. That is crazy to think about. I never considered that before. So whoever brought that up to me, you're a goat. So what I did was, hey, maybe we need to play a few more wind walls. And boom, wind wall is now a 2-off sideboard slot, and then you pray that you find it in games 2 and 3. And then once you have all the staples sorted, you can start playing the experimental cards. But remember, that's what they are. They're an experiment. You want to test your deck so that once you realize that cards are really good or that they're not really good and they're really bad, you can make changes accordingly. For example, when I was building Ahri, I was testing Hui, and I was like, okay, Hui reads really strong. It is very good at what it does, at getting you card advantage or filtering your cards, all for the simple price of moving. And then I realized, hey, Hui is not really doing the thing. Hey, Hui. Sorry. He's not really doing the thing that he needs to be doing in this deck. We're not really moving him back and forth, so he's not getting as much value as we think. The 8-might he has when attacking is very conditional on me having a creature that I want to discard in my hand when I attack with him. So his retake potential is not even that strong in the first place. And at 5 energy and 1 power, he's really clunky in the deck. You want to be holding up your mana from as early as turn 2 or 3. Mostly 3 sometimes. So having a 5 energy card in your hand just kind of stuck there until you have a good window to play it is not ideal. So he's what I swapped in for some more Plundering Poros. Now this is a bit of a give and take. I realized that without this, my deck's retake up capabilities have basically gotten a bit weaker. So then I have to make some more changes based on this. Basically, you run a few more charms to move their units away from the battlefields, so that if your opponent has a big unit you can't contest with, you just charm it back to the battlefield, move your unit in, and then you can play your hold spells like Thwonks, so that their big might doesn't really matter anymore. So to summarize, once you start looking at what the deck you're actually, building the deck, you're looking at staples. That's the main thing. Then you're looking at cards to support your strategy so that they don't just get hard counted. So you look at, for example, Defy, because you look at what your strategy is trying to do, and then you look at what would counter that strategy. So then you look at cards to stop it getting countered. And then you can start thinking about other cards you want to experiment with. Let's look at another example. I was experimenting with charm Kazakhs. And the way I came across the charm tech, which I thought I think, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to build Kazakhs, I was experimenting with Evelyn. I was like, okay, this card doesn't seem that crazy, but it's a 2-drop, you can hide it. Sounds decent when you charm a thing and make Kazakhs fight. And then from experimenting, I discovered that, yeah, charming units into Kazakhs is very effective. Because you're gaining XP, you're growing him, you're making him even bigger. Your signature spell is kind of like a charm effect. That's really good. So then I realized, oh, that's kind of the strategy we're building towards. We're making Kazakhs just like a forced combat deck. So this is why playtesting is basically your most important tool as a deck builder. Once you've come up with a draft of the list, it is important to playtest and playtest and playtest until you know exactly what every card does in your deck, what its purpose is. Is it good enough? Does it deserve its slot? What are other potential cards that could take its slot, and why are they not taking it, and why the current slot is better? You need to, through playtesting, discover what everything about your deck in terms of what the cards you're actually running are. This is why it's taking so long to get piped together. I need to playtest all the different variations of the way the deck can be built, all the different very strong cards that the deck can be playing, just so that you have, the best possible build available. If you're trying to like do something properly, you need to do the work. Basically, you can't just throw a list together, and if it wins, great. If it doesn't, oh well. If you're actually trying to build the most successful list possible, then you have to experiment a lot. This is gonna, yes, involve losing a whole ton, but overall that is gonna improve your win rate in the long run of now you have a better deck. Trial by fire, basically. But I would say that if you're not innovating completely and you're just trying to pick up a legend and see what you can do with it, try to look at what the masters are doing. This is a very important point, especially because this is a game played by thousands of people. Whatever you thought about, don't worry, someone else has probably thought about it first. It's very unlikely that you're the super special sunshine that discovered a very niche interaction. There's probably been some Chinese player that has played with the cards longer than you and already thought about this kind of strategy. It's very important to look online and then see tournament results, what people have been bringing to tournaments in terms of the legend, and what cards they're running and what allowed them to bring the deck to some level of success. But then this brings up an important point. Say you want to build Ornn, and you're looking around, or a better example would be, say you want to build Rumble, and you're looking around on deck lists, on tournament websites and websites that submit deck lists. I'll put it up on the video. I can't think of it right now. And you're thinking, oh, I'm really not finding any winning deck lists with this deck. I'm trying to sort through big tournaments and wins. Nothing's come up for Rumble. Trying to look through big tournaments and top 8s. Nothing's come up for Rumble. Top 16, same thing. Mid tournaments, wins, nothing. Then you realize the most successful Rumble build was probably someone who got a medal card at a regional who went 154th place. And then you realize, there is no one having success with this legend in the current game. So then what do? You have to readjust your goal, because if your goal was to build something that wins, well, good luck. You're not going to have a lot of success. People who are better than you, who are entering regionals, have not found success with this thing, and you're probably not going to do much better. Then you think, okay, is this at least going to win a few Nexus Knight specs? Probably not. If no one's running it and everyone else's decks is beating this, then I don't know what your goals are going to be. Maybe you try it just for fun, but then if it doesn't come out well, then you're just wasting a lot of money and time. And if you're trying to win Nexus Knights packs, you could have just saved yourself a week and ran something better than this. So, hey, the conclusion you should naturally come to is this is not worth trying, and let's scrap it and go back to the drawing board. When you're building a deck, the main thing you're going to encounter is a lot of failure and a lot of dead ends. And forcing something just because you want to try it and because that's the thing you want to build around, is not how you should be playing card games. Bringing it back to what I heard in the Eternal Glory podcast, they realized that a lot of people don't want to be wrong rather than trying to be right. Everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to come to the right conclusion in the end, but sometimes people just don't want to be wrong. So an example would be, hey, I like Miss Fortune a lot. She's very cool, and I want to turn her into a meta contender because I think she's got the potential, and I think she's got a very interesting way to build her. So I forced Miss Fortune for a long time, with varying degrees of success, different approaches, different strategies. And in set one, the conclusion I came to is, okay, the reason why people aren't playing mid-range MF or not finding success with mid-range MF is because it's not good. So just drop it and come back to it later. Came back to it in Spirit Forge. Hey, Miss Fortune is doing a lot better now. The deck is relatively competitive, but I still haven't 3-0'd. I haven't seen a lot of people make major success with this deck other than a few small Chinese tournaments. And so I'm thinking, hey, let's pivot to something else. There's no shame in being wrong. There's only shame in trying to force a right answer out of a wrong place. If I just stuck to Miss Fortune and said, no, everyone else is wrong, I'm going to figure this thing out, then probably my enjoyment of the game would have been gone. I probably would have not been able to find joy in Riftbound anymore. Don't get me wrong, tenacity can be rewarded in this game. Sometimes if you can't figure something out, it could be just because of lack of reps and you just need to experiment with the deck more. But the chances of that is short. So try to apply tenacity within reason. Don't just force something for weeks on end and then realize only after the next set comes out that, this wasn't very good. I wonder what Nathan's thinking about and what he thinks about the whole strategy.
I don't think fucking words contemplate like how bloody big this place is. Like, that's just side events and that's just the shop. What the hell? What is going on? Look, and then there's the main event there, and then we're cutely over there. What the hell, boys?
Okay, so to summarize on my approach to building decks, first you think of what you're trying to do and what your goals are. So you want to play an aggro deck, and it's because you want to approach the meta to take it down, yada yada. So you think about what your goals are, and then you think about what the strategy you're trying to do is. And then once you've done that, you think, okay, what's the best legend for this? You want to play something that counters Aurelia, so you build Leona. Then you think, okay, what are the staples that I should put in this deck? You realize, Salvage is pretty good in the current meta. Discipline, Defy, Stellacorn, the Hidden Blade, Not So Fast, etc. And then, once you have that, you need to start thinking, what are the cards to best support this strategy? I'm a hold deck, so I need to be playing cards that are good at holding, like Sona. Then you start thinking, okay, now is when I can start thinking about cards that I can experiment with now that I have the core of the deck. So I want to experiment with Stellacorn Herder because I like the potential that it can do to draw a lot of cards. And it's one of the best green cards, so why not try it? Or I want to experiment with Guardian's Angel because I want to protect my units, and GA is probably the most efficient way to make my units survive through anything. Or even a fun card, like I want to try playing 3 off Green Leona in my deck because I think the card is really neat, and I don't think this space of design has been tested a lot in Riftbound. And then once you have the draft of the deck, what you do is you experiment a lot and you playtest a lot. So that way you can figure out what cards are working, what cards are not working. And then if you run into a dead end and you run into not realizing what you should or shouldn't be doing, you can look at tournament deck lists, you can look at what the pros are doing, what the experts are doing, seeing what their approach is, what their conclusions are, and then go from there. I appreciate that deck building can be a very individualistic process, and you want to be the person who figures everything out, but sometimes that's just not possible, and that's purely for the purpose of everyone is playing this game, and there's a lot of people playing who are better than you, so it's a bit arrogant to think you're the only one figuring something out. And then, after all of this, you should be, to a certain extent, content with a list that you've tested yourself, other people have tested, you've seen what other people are doing, what they're finding success with, and and then you just have something that you can consider, hey, I built this and I think it's pretty good. And then this brings me to a point that is, I realize that there's no shame in playing something that's meta. Okay, let me rephrase that. I realize that the appeal of playing something that's meta. Personally, I think innovating is the best thing you can do in any game, at least any TCG. And playing something that you can consider your own is something that's very gratifying to me. Something that is like, I'm having fun in this game, not just because I'm winning, but because I'm winning with something that's good. But then I started playing Draven. I started playing Draven last week, and I realized maybe there's a reason why this is meta. Maybe there's a reason why everyone is playing this deck. It's because, one, it wins, and it feels pretty good when you're doing the thing, because it's like, oh, this is probably pretty broken. But then I realized the deck is also pretty fun. There's having so many interaction points, so many decisions, so like the deck is not brain dead easy. It's just like, well, I gotta guarantee that I'm winning. And then you realize, yeah, that's pretty neat. So if you've come across, the conclusion you listening to this came to is that maybe it's not worth building something, it's too much work, it's not guaranteed success, and I just want to play whatever people are playing, then honestly, that's a fair conclusion to come to. Yeah, if you want to just play meta, don't let us being off meta nerds stop you, because I started off playing Darius and feeling Draven. Started off playing Draven feeling pretty shit, and then I realized, the deck is pretty fun. One thing I think I failed to consider is maybe you're a budget player. I certainly have been, and currently kind of am. And then you want to build something that's the best thing you can build for a budget. That's a really interesting approach to brewing, I think, because it forces you to build the best thing possible within the constraints of a literal money budget. For example, when I built Darius, I realized I wasn't building as a budget deck, but I realized the thing was so budget and so cheap that I should build it as a budget deck and as a budget option for anyone who just wants a cheap deck that they can just throw together and just start winning games with. So one card I importantly omitted from the deck list in my video was Kai'Sa, because Kai'Sa is still very expensive. I'm pretty sure even after the Origins re-release with Unleashed, still gonna stay very expensive. But after I built the deck, after a few weeks, I started asking my friends who have Kaisers if I could borrow them for the Nexus Knights, and I started thinking, this is very successful, and this is giving me a lot more agency, because Kaiser is just a really strong card. Obviously, it's great if you have people in your space that you can borrow cards from. That's kind of like how I put Draven together so quickly. I just my friends just let me borrow some Kaisers, some Darius, some Falling Stars, whatever. That and Spinning Axe dropped a lot in price. That was fun. So if you're building a deck with a budget in mind, obviously think about what the best in for cost staples are. Luckily in our game, a lot of the staples are commons and uncommons. Like Discipline is an uncommon, Not So Fast is an uncommon, Defy is a common, Singularity is an uncommon. My point being, unlike in a game like Magic where everything is super expensive, our good cards are relatively abundant, especially because everyone's open so much. So that should give you a lot of freedom. But then you need to start thinking about a very complicated question, which is, okay, if the meta is so solved and beating it is so hard, how am I going to do that on a budget? And then you just have to get really creative. I've seen people build Leona because all the Leona cards are really cheap, again, because it has a decent matchup into Irelia. Or built Rek'Sai because Rek'Sai also has very good answers and it's just a very interesting deck. Like yellow Rek'Sai kind of arose because it's like a budget option to build the meta or bully the meta. There's a lot of card advantage, a lot of removal, a lot of aggressive units, and it's also very cheap to put together because most of it is bulk. And then you can also look at other things that you can do to approach the meta in a weird way, like holds is not very popular, so all the good hold cards should be pretty cheap. Or maybe you take a completely different approach and just start thinking of what's some really cheap cards that are really broken. Like Stellacorn Herder. How can you build the best Stellacorn Herder to snowball the hell out of the game? that's yeah, how you build budget decks. You just have to be very creative and very conscious of what the options you have. Hopefully this podcast hasn't been too boring. I'm gonna have to edit a lot out, but I'm done yapping. I think I've yapped enough. I'm thinking in the following week we're gonna try to bring back Brain Rot bot lane. Gonna try to do that. Next week we're gonna be talking about Lille, what the best decks have been in Lille, what the crazy experiences everyone's had are, what Nathan's experience was. Hopefully you didn't miss Nathan too much in this episode. I know just me yapping kind of sounded like I'm a demented weirdo, but I've tried my best. And hey, I'm thinking that since the podcast is starting to pick up a bit of traction, I'm thinking, hey, if you're interested in getting to feature yourself in the podcast, I thought a cool thing to do is answering viewer questions. So if you have the time to write down what you've, I don't know, write down a question for us that you want us to answer, put it in the description or in the comments, and we'll get to it. Yeah, that's a cool point. That's something we should do. And yeah, this has been Recall to Base. I've been Samuel, and Nathan's not here, so sucks to be him. He's whatever. Yeah. Bye.